Hello and welcome to our next podcast episode. I'm the Motor Doc, and well, temperature's a little different than it was for me over the last week. It's Saturday today, and I'm doing another 15-hour drive straight south, and it's after putting in about almost 40 hours last week to go to different sites throughout the Northeast, including enjoying a snowstorm, which I believe was prompted by the fact that I had said something to the tune of I was hunting Sasquatch. So up at the Adirondacks again, and on the way back, we stayed an extra day because of snowstorm. Instead of making a 2-day trip back, I had to make it a 16-hour trip. That was exciting. But in any case, so stay tuned. We'll talk about whether or not we found Sasquatch. So part of the reason I use Sasquatch is kind of I don't know if the correct term is metaphor. And basically, over the years, I keep hearing consultants and companies talk about their successes in companies and everything else, and how they've hit the pinnacle of reliability, maintenance, or sustainability, energy, waste stream, stuff like that, emissions. But when you go look, they're not there. Usually not to the extent that they're discussed. I mean, they may have been for a short period, but generally they're there and then gone. So I view that as Sasquatch. There's been sightings of Sasquatch, but often they're not real. Or at least we don't think they are, because they don't last, or they drop, and that's part of the problem we've had in industry, is keeping things going. The other problem we're running into, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is the modern workforce. And 2020 did a lot of damage, and even a little bit before that, you'd do an interview and somebody'd say, how much travel's involved, and tell them 75%, or in my case 90%, and the response is, oh well, you can travel and I'll just stay here and do your reports, that kind of thing. And remember that what I just said, because this week I ran into a discussion on social media, and I responded because it was saying, why is it that we have to put up with, it was a recruiter, why do we have to put up with our clients having to go through 4 interviews before they get hired? And possibly because I'm hearing it more and more, especially in the trades end, is people will hire people and they'll come on board if they show up at all, if they don't ghost the company outright because they got a different offer or whatever else. But they'll show up, and by that afternoon they'll have decided, they'll go to lunch and just not come back. I've run into that over and over and over again, and people don't understand that's time consuming and costly, going through the process of hiring that person, no matter what their actual wage is. So it's not a simple thing. I ran into it when I've run companies for people. I did it when I was hiring people, that kind of thing. And I look at it and I go, okay, where is this coming from? Well, then we started noticing on news articles and TV shows and interviews and social media from people that help people get hired, and they'll say, oh, I think my favorite one was a cartoon that somebody had posted, and it basically showed an escalator with one person at the bottom and everybody else going way up the escalator of pay scale and stuff like that, and the one at the bottom was the loyal employee, and everybody else was jumping from job to job. That was the description on the cartoon. And I thought, yeah, that works for a very short period of time, but generally you'll find companies will avoid even interviewing people And I know because I've sat in those meetings where they'll say, well, this person has jumped from job to job to job to job, lasts maybe a year, sometimes even every 2 years, unless it's a very specialized contract employee situation or somebody who would be hired deliberately for a short period of time. And of course, they would be aware of it too. Generally, jobs where the company is going to spend a lot of money in training and everything else, they'll look at that and they'll say, okay, I'm going to train somebody. And it's rough enough that from a corporate standpoint, especially when things get tight, where you'll train somebody and then they go. And then there of course, is that saying about, what if I train them and they leave? And they say, what if you don't train them and they stay? And that's true. But the problem is the challenges that are put out there because people are saying you must do this now. And part of it is so that they can get funding. You know what I mean? How do they get paid? Well, they get paid by every time you get a new job. So you stay for a certain period of time, they stop getting their fee, so then they want you to look for a job again. So I was on and I made a comment to the effect, and this will be in the newsletter, but I put something to the effect of, when they made that statement about, why is it that this? And I said, could be because companies are getting tired of people job hopping, not sticking around, not even showing up for interviews sometimes. And then when they show up, they're expecting the company to do certain things and not offer the company back any loyalty. I mean, you're basically, a company should be paying you for your time, your effort, your skills, right? Things like that. Not just because. There's efforts that are necessary. And I also said, because part of the comment had to do with, and they were upset because, this person wanted to work remotely and the company didn't want that. And they said something to the effect of, you've got the power now. The company doesn't have a choice. And unfortunately, that's not true. Companies do have a choice. When we also see the same things that other people put out there too, right? So we see I have a job, full-time job, and I'm working from home, so I can take a second salary for a second full-time job for the exact same time where I'm supposed to be working for the other company. Well, that would, technically, you could do that if you were a contractor, independent contractor, or contract employee, I suppose. But if you're a full-time employee and you're expected to do that, I mean, I had a person once who, during the day, I had hired them, and I mentioned this too in the discussion. I said I hired them, and to take on certain tasks, but I needed to be freed up to do other things. And the calls from our service would end up being forwarded to me, and it'd be middle of the day. Well, I'd let this person work from home. This is some years back. I think 2006 or 7, and I get a call from a client, and he said, well, I've been trying to reach somebody, and on and on and on. So I call and find out the guy's at the hardware store because he had a honey-do list to do during the day, during the week, when our calls are coming in. That's the active time. And he didn't see any problem with just doing things other than what he was hired to do. And I've had, in another case, an employee who, during the workday, was doing a job for their home business, and at the same time, I'd say, I need these tasks done within this certain period of time. And they'd say, well, I didn't get it finished on time during the day, so I need overtime. It's like, wait a minute, you spend half your day on the phone with somebody else, not for me, but for somebody else. You need to start taking that time off. Oh, no. That I'm here. It's the time I'm supposed to work. And, well, of course, that person didn't last the next 5 minutes. And we had pretty good hiring practices. So this is all during that period of time. And it was very disturbing. Of course, you get lucky, you get some great people, right? I had my assistant prior to 2020. She was phenomenal, did everything I needed, and then more. Very, very loyal. And things weren't working out as far as the business went because certain things were happening with the business. So we basically decided that we were going to do contract employees. I found everybody work and decided to back off. So our model is completely different than before, and I still access the people that I had before, that kind of thing. So remaining loyal to them, but also having to do things for the business. And part of it had to do with the fact that we'd expected, more of specific type of work for those people. Now, what I do and what my independent contractors do is very specialized. So I don't need somebody for more than 20-25% of what they do. I do a lot of different things, and so on and so on. So neither here nor there. I've got a unique business model. Everybody thinks it's a 1 or 2 man show. In reality, we've got sub companies and contractors and all kinds of other stuff. And getting back to the other discussion, so all this was going on. So I basically said, well, here's a problem. I said, you're telling me that companies should be just hiring people whether they stay or not and everything else. And I got lambasted by these recruiter types. They were going on about how, and of course the other recruiters are cheering them on, how companies are egotistical and managers micromanage and all this other stuff. And, employees don't have to tolerate it anymore. And as a matter of fact, employees should now be making decisions for what the companies do. They should be making decisions. So if I have somebody who's supposed to be a mechanic in a shop working on something, they're supposed to be making decisions on the customer, what direction the company goes and stuff like that. How do you do that without any information? Not saying that an employee doesn't have the potential to do that, because most do. I mean, I did. That's where I started. But literally they were saying that the management should no longer make decisions. It should be the employees driving the company. So I was this week at a company, and I was doing it almost as a favor, and drove 14 hours to get to the site. And there was an electric machine that needed to be worked on and needed to be tested. And I said, I've got to be at a site. We're doing an installation. I can give you, the afternoon. Here's what I need. That's it. I can't be there for longer than that. So we worked out a deal and everything. And so I get out there, and it's in the afternoon, and the thing's not set up to do what I need it to do. So we do some other tests. Well, it's not set up right, and I'm saying I need it on the floor and I need to run it. Now, I was a mechanic, a winder. I've run repair shops. It's an hour, tops, to get it on the floor. I had something going on I had a meeting in the evening. I looked at everything. My test was going to take 5 minutes once it was on the floor, and we would have definitive results for their customer who'd been waiting for some time for this, and they couldn't figure out why it wasn't producing enough torque. Well, the test results were testing good, but it just wasn't producing torque. So I said we need it on the ground, and the employee says, I've got to leave. Okay. How quickly can it be done? Is there somebody who can stay? Oh, nobody else allowed to touch it. I go, is this a union shop? No. Can anybody get it down? No, everybody's busy. Well, how long is it going to take? 2 days. We're going to need you to stay 2 days. And I just kind of chuckled and said, no, I'm leaving today. And then they were trying to inform me that I needed to cancel all my other work, meaning the employee, the mechanic, was telling me that I needed to cancel my other work in order to stick around because it was inconvenient for him and which would result in all the contractors and everything else that were waiting for me at the other job site to also have to adjust their schedule because one person in a company didn't feel they needed to do work and nobody else was allowed to do it. So, and the worst part was that the manager there went right along with that. And I said, fine, we're done. I'm going to be sending a bill for my time because I did this other work. But I can't tell you definitively because you didn't do the task that needed to be done to test it that I had informed you ahead of time. And they said, well, we didn't think you actually needed that. So they weren't able to figure it out. I knew what the testing was and everything else. So the employee drove the business, and as a result, they're not responding to the customer. Not the first time I've run into that. I had it happen once in my organization, and the person didn't last at all. I mean, he was gone. Just won't allow that. I came up from the military side. You take care of your customer. Your customer service is internal as well, and for your vendors, and also for your customers, right? If a customer's plant is down, the service industry, you're working through holidays. That's when things get busy because customers, that's when they shut down. That's the expectation. Not anymore, apparently. So, and this location, this wasn't the first time I've run into this. It's, we don't feel like getting it done, but we've planned around it this time. This is the only time we can be shut down. This is the only time we can do this. We've got tight schedules on everything else. Well, so-and-so doesn't want to work longer. Well, especially when you say, we're willing to pay the overtime. Well, we'll take the money, but we're not actually going to work any overtime, and we're not going to meet the time. Or, more so, okay, here this is, and here's extra for meeting a special delivery date. And I'm dealing with this one right now. It's going to be part of this trip. And I get a response to the tune of, well, that's great, but, we don't feel like actually delivering it any faster, even though you're paying us a premium for faster delivery. We've decided to actually deliver it 4 weeks later than the earliest due date. And we're not talking about small orders. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 things. I'm talking about the largest order they've ever received. And it's not that they're not capable of delivering that, because we've done similar sizes, but in chunks. Nope, they just decided that they're not going to do it. And that's frustrating. So I'm going to have a meeting with their management, which takes me away from other work that I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the new generation, right? This is where we are now. And I didn't really want to go down this path in this, but I'm on a roll. So we're on a rant. This is what happens when I type and I go into a rant. It becomes, it's not inconvenient to me personally. It's not my ego or anything. It is, I have a business to run, damn it. And there is time, and there is money, and there is customer loyalty. And that means that not just the customer loyal to you, but you loyal to your customer. How can you be loyal to your customer when your contractors or employees decide that they're no longer loyal and they can do whatever they want, and you just have to live with their decisions? Well, this is what's being pushed. This is what's coming out in social media, and everything else. I'm hoping that this is, malicious intent. And this isn't the way people actually believe business should be run, or we're all in trouble. So the person that I was chatting with, and I was, he comes back and he says, well, companies, you're egotistical and all this other stuff. I mean, just made it really as personal as possible. And I used to react to that a long time ago, but to be perfectly blunt, I don't really care what people think. I care about what I do and how I take care of things. So this person's going on about micromanagement and everything else, and I'm like, I don't have time to, and I'm thinking to myself, I've never had time to micromanage anybody. I'm busy. I'm just as busy as everybody else. I'm taking a financial risk. My reputation's at stake when things go wrong or I can't deliver and stuff like that. So why should somebody who doesn't have that same stake, who's been convinced by people who basically what I'm seeing is literally in all of the discussion there, that they believed that people should hire people and then that person should move on after 6 months or a year. Well, it's not for the benefit of the person. Oh yeah, we'll get you a 10% raise. Okay, great. You get a 10% raise. You get another 10% raise, another 10, and all of a sudden you can't find work. You're unemployed because nobody will hire you. Well, the person who's convinced you to do that's already moved on to the next batch of people that they're doing that to, right? That's kind of my view. I know that there's some honest folks out there, but when I'm hearing this on the news, when I'm hearing this on social media, when I'm seeing people complaining about why are companies, doing this, that, or the other thing, well, I'd just say that's part of the reason why I don't hire direct employees right now. I don't really want to tolerate it. I don't want to tolerate that type of thing. So in the end, we keep to a tight group of customers, and we keep to our customers themselves, and we take care of them. But now I have a feeling I know why things are happening. So when we go to the Hill, this is going to be part of the discussion I'm having is, well, we're having a problem with the workforce, and it's not that there's a lack of people, it's messaging. Why are we messaging that, when companies are saying, no, we need people interacting in the office. Now, mind you, there's some companies that are doing different variations, but it's not because they're kowtowing to anything. It's just they've found a financial benefit to it. And they found a group of people that may or may not be doing some of the things like the multiple jobs. Heck, there was one bragging about how they were able to juggle four and five jobs at a time, full-time jobs, which tells me that they're not being particularly effective at any one of them. So where do we go now? How do we deal with this lack of loyalty? And of course everybody, the immediate response is, well, companies aren't loyal to the employee, and if something happens to you, because that's the other thing, by the way. Oh, if you die, then they'll just have you replaced the following week. Well, yeah, it's a business, it's got to run. If you're irreplaceable, then a business can't really support that. So that's neither here nor there. If you are building and loyal to the company and you're doing good for the company, if they can hold on to you, they'll find a way to hold on to you. If they let you go as counting heads, you're probably not in the right environment. But that's neither here nor there. I don't see that very much, unless you're in a mega corporation, right? I was present once when we were at a company where everybody's sitting down. They turned out lights in certain sections. They said anybody whose section has got the lights out, come get your pink slip. But in any case, that is extremely rare. Small businesses, restaurants, where you hire staff and they just simply don't show up, so your restaurant has to close that day until they finally go to business. We've been dealing with this not just during 2020, but since 2020. And part of the problem had to do with, not just news, media, and everything else, but policies. So we just ran into it, when we were traveling. We went to a restaurant and a sign on the door, staff didn't arrive, so we had to not open. It's not the first time I've run into that. So as we're watching all this stuff and we're watching this division happening in everything, we're now also seeing this division between employer and employee, and I've never seen anything like it. I've read about it. Something like this happened in the early 1900s, which spurred basically unions, which no problem with that. But maybe it needs to work the other way around. as a small business owner, I'm willing to hire people, but how can I if I know I'm going to hire somebody and they're just not going to show up? Why not just do it myself, right? And somebody said, well, you've got certain knowledge. It's my responsibility to pass that knowledge on. Yeah, but if there's nobody there to take the knowledge or nobody willing to learn the knowledge, I'm not going to hire somebody at a ridiculous salary to basically have them sit there and not learn. I mean, you have to pay dues to get somewhere. And somebody else said, well, you have this certain expertise. I go, yeah, I joined the Navy. I worked my tail off. I worked in a lubrication lab when I was in high school. I put in tons of hours at companies, went to school, and raised a family. I'm amazed when I run into people that will do that these days. I mean, we saw it in the early 2000s. We saw it start. Well, people don't work on their cars anymore. How can they do the trades, right? So in the end, yeah, just some advice. The old-fashioned concept of company loyalty, showing up for an interview, let alone showing up in the job and giving up more than half a day. That's going to go a long way to moving you through industry. Listening to all this crap that's going on right now about job hopping is a good thing and stuff like that. I mean, heck, I got in the Navy, I made less. Matter of fact, I'll tell you. So I was making, I'd say after everything and so on, I was probably getting in the mid-20s for as an E5 in the military. I got out. My first job was $10 an hour, and we're talking about it's not a lot. But I was there and I learned. I did overtime. When I got married, my wife had to work too. We had kids, so we were working. I was doing school. I was traveling when I needed to. I was working weekends when I needed to. I was working holidays when I needed to. We always found a way to do everything. And as my career advanced, I made one move because there were personal reasons, but having to do with my ex-wife's family. So we moved in with them to help them, and I took another job and took a pay cut to $950, and continued, and then all of a sudden I started to watch my salary increase as I took more and more responsibility, and I was always available, and I took on more stuff, and I went and I got my machinist certificate, and I got all these other things, so I could do machining at that point, winding, mechanic, pumps, gearboxes, motors, specialty equipment, and got into machine tool work and did virtually every test out there, and continued until I got into academia. And then there I was teaching my own classes, and they were upset because I didn't have TAs, but I felt that my students were there to learn from me, and I was doing machine learning and AI, what we now call machine learning and AI. But machine learning and AI and all this other stuff, while I was also at the Energy Resources Center doing things. And that was a lot of work. I mean, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, very little time off, and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And then got back into industry, and then eventually started my own company, and I had big contracts because I was always there and always loyal to the customer and always delivered. Then I go back to my original employer to help them out because they needed to get things improved, and this was about 2009. My major clients at the time were General Motors, U.S. Steel, Amtrak, and a couple others, and of course they were most affected. So I went back to the other repair shop, and I helped them build, turn things around with the staff, with the guys that taught me when I was younger, and just put the hours in, and then got back into my own business again, and that's where I'm now. But it just didn't let up. Always made sure I was taking care of that. And I've had my chances to take vacation. I've seen some incredible things, and I get to spend time with the family and everything else. So I wasn't sacrificing anything, but a few years back I decided to stop using social media, which gave me even more time. And it's like, where is that kind of thing anymore? I mean, I wasn't unusual. I was normal. Other people were doing the same type of thing. They were putting in the time, the effort, and building out their stuff. Well, now, if I followed advice, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to sit home and play video games, stare at my phone, take on a job, not show up, ghost the company, get upset as to why they're not happy or have basically let me go because I didn't show up without letting them know, that kind of thing. Or go in and walk into the CEO's office and basically tell him he doesn't know how to operate his business, and they just hired me the other day. Well, wait a minute, I do that. No, neither. In reality, when we look at this, I mean, in order to move forward, and I'm all about the new workforce. I mean, I was part of the team that helped get the Perkins reauthorization for trade schools back. And I've worked on the Hill since the 1990s on getting STEM and skilled trade stuff going so that the next generation can move forward, or even the present generation when they have to switch jobs. But the stuff I've heard about companies not having loyalty and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't really see that often. And people that job hop, they get that reputation really fast, especially in small industries. I mean, we used to see it in certain areas, even with the motor repair industry. There'd be a handful of people, and they'd go from company to company to company, and eventually they're not making any pay raises. The companies that they go to know that, this guy's going to be here for 6 months or a year. We'll just let them move on to the next place at that period of time. We're not going to put any effort behind them. I had that happen when I ran the repair shop, in Richmond, Virginia for a brief period. I got one of those guys who'd wandered around. He was towards the end of his career. And he basically came in and he goes, nobody really wants me anymore. What do I do? And we sat down, we talked about it, and I said, I'm going to give you some responsibility. If you stick it out, because I had basically told the company owner that I was only going to be there for 2 years. I said, 6 months, you can run the company, you can run the repair shop. And he stuck it out. We worked well together. And then I left, and it was the longest he stayed at a company afterwards. He eventually passed away, but for other reasons. But through everything, what it needed was he had learned a lesson the hard way. The job hopping thing doesn't work. Just some friendly advice. I think maybe nobody will listen to it. So up to you. What's the harm in trying and seeing if you're loyal, if you get loyalty back, and if you stick out a job for a little bit, seeing what happens. You might find that you get more opportunity than you're being told, on social media. When I stopped watching that crap, my life changed again. So in any case, best of luck on that. So let's get on to the other thing, Sasquatch. I guess that was a Sasquatch story as well, looking for the elusive, old-time employee, right? In any case, the Sasquatch thing, reliability and maintenance and consulting. So we've run into some things as we've traveled. I usually I'll bring somebody with me. Sometimes it's Bronca, sometimes it's an independent contractor when I need field assistance and so on. And so we'll talk, we'll go in, we'll take a look at stuff, and you kind of notice right away. I've been in some companies that have talked about how they're the pinnacle of reliability and maintenance, or that they've got their emissions really low, or they don't have harmonic content, or some other, whatever. They're the best of the best in their eyes. And you go in there and either they were and now they're not, or they never were in the first place. That's what I mean by Sasquatch. We've heard the stories, and there's whole consultancies built on some of the stories, and then you find out that's not what happened, right? I think one of the ones was a consulting company I ran into, and the owner, the story was the owner used to sit down and he'd go in, and his consulting work started with butcher block paper. He'd roll out this butcher block paper, write out a whole plan, and they'd follow it, and the whole company would turn around and they would make 1,000,000% profit and all this other stuff. So I look back into it, a guy never did butcher block paper. He had gone to school, he graduated, and just on and on and on. So, the hunt for Sasquatch is basically along those lines. What we need to do, and we're seeing it come out with some of the guys who had done their dues, right, in industry, and now they get out and they say, okay, I've learned some lessons. Some were good, some were bad. Here's the stuff that I learned didn't work, and here's the stuff I did that did work, and here's what I recommend, or here's the stuff I thought of that I wasn't able to implement. Here's what I recommend. And they're generally successful. You see them, they stick around, they talk, they push it forward. I'm watching a couple of my favorite companies do that right now, that kind of thing, and I see them at the conferences and stuff. We get together, we chat, and I'm careful about mentioning companies in podcasts and stuff, because sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. But let's just say, you guys all know who you are, and I'm sitting there going rah, rah, rah behind you and sending work your way when I can, because you see that effort. So when I'm out there and I'm seeing some of the, let's take AI and IIoT stuff. I'm hearing all these phenomenal stories about IIoT and digital transformation turned our company around, or turned this company around, because it's generally not that company writing about it. It's generally the salesperson or the marketing team for the company who sells the devices saying all these great things about their stuff, and then referring to how this one company did whatever, and then when you go visit that company, they're all complaining because it's obviously not what happened. So that's the whole thing. So I'm still searching for Sasquatch. I'm still looking for that company that has really gone out of their way, and they've got their energy goals, they've got their reliability goals, they've got their maintenance goals down and in place, and they win, right? And it's to the point where the joking part was last week, or this past week, was it's almost like Sasquatch is hiding, because I think the one time I went up there and my GPS tried to get me across the border into Canada, and then another time, I was directed a different way because they shut down the road, and the third time was this last time. There was a big snowstorm and all this snow in the mountains, so it's like, okay, I could head back now and get part of my drive in today, or I could make it a 15 or 16 hour drive the next day, and when they clear the roads out. So that's what I did, and I found Sasquatch, but he was hiding under a tarp. So the statue that I was planning on taking the picture with was they tarped it, and then some silhouette things were piled up against a wall, and so I found Sasquatch, but I only know where Sasquatch is. I didn't see Sasquatch yet, so we'll do that again another time. So let's switch topics completely. Let's get into something else. We'll now technical real quick, but in any case, arc flash. So I had an interesting one this week at a job site. So we were in there, and these were these little DIN rail circuit breakers, and we were in, and the electricians installed some equipment, and not related to it, but while we were tracing out some wires, got a couple of sparks from underneath one of them. So we turned off that circuit breaker, and the electrician realized that in this circuit breaker, the conductor, the screw, the fastener, the conductor was put behind it and then tightened down, because when you buy some of these IEC contactors now, it used to be that they were always wide open so that you could put your thing in and close it. Well, I'm noticing too, because I order a lot, that sometimes they're partially closed, sometimes they're fully closed, sometimes they're completely open. So I was making a practice when I get them is to open it all the way first before I try to put a wire in. And then you take and you have to bend the wire and stuff, because they're not made as good as they used to. Used to be made. And all of that's in the effort to keep costs down, right? Maybe it's workmanship, I don't know. But anyways, that's the case. So this one here, it looked like whoever had installed it had put the wire behind the fastener, the contact. And so it was just leaning against it, which meant it was arcing and generating heat. And it was a relatively recent replacement. So the electrician took a look around, took a quick glance at everything, couldn't get it off the DIN rail, so didn't get to take it off and inspect it. I went off and informed the customer. Come back, he goes, yeah, I checked it, not a problem. We put it back in. Customer comes over, looks at it, and says, okay, we'll go ahead and run it. So we turn it on, no problem. So I'm doing some testing in that panel. We're taking live electrical tests at that point, so I'm suited up and everything. Take the tests. Don't smell anything. Don't hear anything. No buzzing. No anything. It's pretty, it was nice and cold outside, so I took a while in front. I was probably in front of it for about 20 minutes and taking electrical tests, which will be in one of the posts I'll be writing shortly, before and after readings on some of these filters that I've been talking about. So, shut the door, latch it, top and bottom. There's two bolts, or two screw type latches, so latch it. Walk in, and we're talking in the other room, and somebody's walking by it, and all of a sudden it sounds like a shotgun went off. And we go out. You never run. Walk out, take a look, and sure enough, the door had blown open. So the pressure was so great that it bent the latches, so out it went. And we go over, and the circuit breaker that had been retightened and checked, bottom half of it was basically missing, and all of them were dripping. Main circuit breaker did not trip, but all the circuit breakers, all the DIN rail circuit breakers did trip. And so we got to look at it. Looks like it shorted to ground onto the DIN rail, and then of course shorted all the other ones. So the fix for that, or the reactive maintenance to that, didn't take too long. But there was like 16 of these things, I think, roughly there around there. Replaced all of them. They're not going to risk another event like that, right? So they went in and replaced all of them. Took them about 90 minutes. Not too bad. And then we took some pictures of how it done. So what had happened was the thin plastic between the lines on two of them, they were different phases, had melted through and tracked. And apparently that would have been happening while we were doing the live testing, and then finally arced and exploded. And it was an explosion again, hard enough to knock the door open. The inside of the door looked like buckshot had been shot at it. Didn't dent the door out or anything, but and obviously the pressure wave was pretty significant. So something to keep in mind. I mean, I guess the lesson learned from that was we should have gone the next step and removed the circuit breaker and verified that there was no damage to it or the one next to it before putting the wire back in and tightening it. I've done similar before, where find a loose connection, just tighten it instead of a more in-depth inspection, because you want to get things back up and running. That's usually the case. And in this case, we did what we always do, and oops, something went wrong. And yes, it was a master electrician that was working with us that had also tightened it. And he goes, "I've never seen anything like that." Yeah, me neither. But in any case, it happened. Nobody injured. The person who was walking by, the first thing I did was check and see if they needed a change of clothes. but they didn't. But it's scary stuff when you think about it. I've had people mention to me, they're like, "Well, you've got a meeting with the executives right after, or the manager right after. Maybe you should award something other than FRs." And I'm like, I'm going to be in an electrical panel. I'm going to wear FRs, or going to wind sites wearing long sleeve FR shirts instead of the short sleeve ones, and having the gloves with me and everything else, and all the other equipment, whatever's appropriate for the FR rating of the calorie rating, I should say, of the panel, because you never know when it could happen. That could have arced, that could have gone off while I was in there. Luckily, I was wearing what amounted to a big, thick flak jacket, FR flak jacket, and all the other stuff I was supposed to be wearing for the rating of that cabinet. Matter of fact, when everything was said and done, when everything was re-energized, anybody who was near the cabinet was in, full gear, including switching hoods. So, and by the way, one of the things that I did while we were there, because there was people taking pictures of the work in progress, another little secret that I always insist on, because people post pictures of people working, unless the thing is obviously locked and tagged out. These days, I tell people when they're taking pictures of equipment and so on, you'll notice that mine will generally not have somebody in the image anymore. And it's because we've seen the cases where people are complaining about, when they see a magazine article. I think I saw one, somebody was in a panel in the thing, and I knew the company that was doing it, and so I knew and you could see that the panel wasn't actually wired to anything. So the person's in there, but it's sending a message that it was okay not to suit up, not to have the equipment on. So yeah, generally my advice to people is, if you're going to take pictures, unless it's a staged picture and you're making sure that everything is appropriate, is not take pictures of people doing anything in an electrical cabinet or anything in a situation that could be deemed dangerous even later. Because you go back and you can take a look at some pictures from like the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, even the 90s, doing things which was perfectly legal at the time, and not now, right? So just a bit of advice that goes along with that. But it was definitely a warning. It was definitely an instance that, it's not my first arc flash. Won't be my last. Avoid them all you can, but you never know when something's going to fail unexpectedly. This was literally a little ticking time bomb, because it had been running for about an hour before it went kaboom. So you never know. I've gone places and we've done all the steps necessary, but the switchgear hadn't been opened in one case 40 years. And so you carefully open the cabinet, and then a piece of steel falls off of something and lands on the floor, or something falls apart. Even though the equipment's off, it's right over the switchgear itself. And what if it falls down and you don't notice it, and then you turn it on later? And people always say, well, just dive in and do it. It's like, okay, well, there's one of me in my company, and if something happens to me, then there is no anything anymore for what I do. So I'm going to take all the steps necessary, because I have no illusion about how dangerous the job is, and go about the levels of caution that are necessary. The other thing I'm also wary about is when I'm in the field, especially in a condition which might end up in an arc flash or something along those lines, is when I notice sometimes a lackadaisical attitude. If I see somebody who's not nervous about going into, a cabinet, or what happened once at a university, I was doing safety training, and I was demonstrating infrared, on a fire pump, one that couldn't be shut down. We were talking about the safest way to do it and everything else. Identify a loose connection. So I'm turning around, I'm talking to the group. Well, one of the electricians walks up, opens the thing up while it's energized, and tightens the connection while it's energized. And I just looked at him dumbfounded. I said, "What are you doing?" And his response was, "Well, it's not that difficult. I've done it before." And I said, "Yeah, and this was probably going to be the time that you got hung up on it. Who's going to be responsible for that?" And he just looked at me funny. I go, "I know you don't care about your life if you're doing that. I care about mine, and I'm sure these other people care about theirs." So the question is, again, why did you do it that way? So from what I understand, that person didn't get disciplined, but he did take a different attitude later on. But in summary, if you're young and entering the industry, don't listen to that crap about not being loyal. Loyal to your company is important, or that you're not going to go as a beginner into a company and be the boss. If there's a company where they take you right out of school or right out of the trades and say, "Oh, you're in charge now," or "We're going to take your direction," I would not walk but run screaming away from that organization, and spend more than half a day or something like that. If you're not planning on going to work for a company, don't waste their time and don't waste yours. Plain and simple. You should be able to figure that out on the first or second interview. And don't be surprised these days. I think they were complaining about 4 interviews. I've seen 5 and 6, because some of the levels that they were talking about are people that it's extremely expensive to hire them. There's announcements that go out to customers and so on associated with the hiring, and things along those lines. Of course, they're going to interview you multiple times. They want to make sure you're going to show up. They're also going to be watching to see if you're on time. I don't have to say this to veterans. A veteran usually shows up early, unless something's delaying them. I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've showed up late, and there's always a reason, legitimate reason, for why that's occurred. So think about that when you're looking for work, because when you go in and you show respect and you show that you're going to be there for a while and everything else, and you show up on time or early, and you take all the steps that you're being advised not to now, because you have the power, whatever they're saying now, which is not true. Sorry, it's not true. They might cave a little bit because they need people then, but then you expect loyalty from the company, and they're looking at people that don't show up on time, aren't loyal to the company, don't expend any effort, or they suspect to have multiple jobs when they're working from home. You're expecting loyalty from a company when any activity that shows otherwise is going to tell them that they can't show loyalty to you, right? Loyalty and respect are earned. They're not given. And, well, okay, so I'm not going to end yet. Another story. I remember a consultant. He came in. I was an executive with the company. He comes in, he sits down, and he's telling me, you need to respect me. And I looked at him and I go, I have no respect for you. And he looks at me funny, he goes, oh, you need to respect me. And I go, I have no respect for you. You haven't earned it. Now, I'm going to be polite, which is respectful, but I am not going to respect your opinion or anything else until we've exchanged once in a while. But if you're demanding that I immediately respect you, it's like somebody coming, and he was doing leadership training of all things. And it wasn't a demonstration. This is really how he was doing it. And then he was doing these tests where, the personality tests, he did it for all the management. And he sat down and he goes, I don't need to do the 200 questions. I only need to do 3. And then I can figure out what well, he had already decided what we were based upon the positions we held. Well, I've had that done professionally, and I know where I fall. And he comes back and he says, oh, basically, I was a nerd, and because I had said I didn't respect him, he was trying to use that test to show that they needed to put somebody else that he selected in the leadership position I was in. So then he comes back and he says, now you'll respect me. And I go, I really don't respect you now, and I don't have to treat you with respect either. So, if you go into a company and you don't do what's necessary to earn respect or earn loyalty or anything along those lines, but expect it, and you don't get it, I don't understand why people are surprised. It's just beyond me. If I go in and I treat a company with loyalty and everything else, and they disappoint me, well, then they're not going to have my loyalty in the future. Fine, I give everybody a chance. 1. The second time, shame on me, right? If there's a reason why they've made a decision, I mean, in a true exchange, and I've had this happen. I had a company that, there were 2 positions in the company. One was very technical, hands-on. Me basically working with my hands, playing with my toys, things like that. Or the other part of it was a leadership position in which I was going to be a manager and do all the HR stuff. They looked at it and it was basically, well, we've decided we want you in the leadership role. We want you overseeing things. So we're going to give you that, and we're going to take away the technical aspect. I'm consulting again, and I'm playing with my toys, and I'm not doing the HR part anymore. If they had talked to me, I would have said, this is what I prefer doing. Is there a reason? Am I doing something wrong technically? Which absolutely not, according to them. So, some of these companies still bring me in for the technical side. I never understood why they would put me in the HR side. That's not the direction that I necessarily prefer, unless I seek that out, right? I preferred the, field service, running field service, running engineering, running this or that, designing, developing, hands-on, blowing things up, yes, that's fun. Things along those lines, getting my hands dirty. This week I'm going to be doing motion amplification along with electrical signature and vibration and possibly some other tests at the first job site, which will be Monday. And then I go and I do, look at two jobs having to do with equipment installation in order to say, okay, here's the conditions, So, long story short, if they had communicated with me and vice versa, then the future would have been different. And I can look back at it and say, you know what, I did something wrong. I didn't make them feel, or I didn't express what my preference was as well. I mean, it's not strictly their fault. They made certain assumptions based upon what I do in volunteer work, where I always end up in some form of leadership, whether it's in standards or something else. But doing it for a professional society and doing it as a business thing, those are completely different environments. So they made an assumption that I wanted to climb the ladder. And no, I just want to be in a position where I can do the technical stuff, and I'm not, relying on somebody else's decisions related to things that, I want to explore. Well, the best way to do that, of course, in the end was run my own thing. So my advice is, if you want respect and you want to be able to do things, you have to show loyalty and you have to show trustworthiness. You have to do the steps necessary for the company to put you in that position and pay you what you believe you deserve, and they usually will. If you can get somebody for $15 an hour, just taking something off the top of my head, not a real salary, but $15 an hour, and they're doing $20 an hour work, and they don't ask for an increase, well, chances are you're not going to be giving them $20 an hour. If they're asking for the increase, they actually deserve the increase, and and they've been loyal on top of competent. Then don't be surprised if that person leaves. But if you're responding, this is the message to the employer. But if you're responding to that, and you're giving them options, or sometimes you can't afford to, but there's other things that people will look for, and you provide that. And usually not a title, or a participation award or something along those lines. And then, of course, treating everybody equally, but based upon their competence. I think I see the saying all the time, if you treat a bad employee well and your good employees observe that, then don't be surprised that you've got a group of bad employees. I've done that before. I've been trapped in my technical stuff and have had employees that are abysmal, and I'm treating them the same as the employee who's loyal and putting in the extra time and watching my back as an owner. I shouldn't be surprised if something doesn't go right with the loyal employee. But if I'm not treating that one employee who has decided they're special, and because they're special they don't need to actually perform their work competently, or that somebody owes them something and therefore they're going to produce less while everybody else is working their tails off, then and I treat them accordingly, and they leave, well, you know what? I haven't lost anything. So other than the time and energy that I had to spend while they were on board. So just some food for thought. I'm not going to tell you one way or another. I'm just giving you a different perspective. And that's it. So enjoy. Next week I'm going to get back to the technical stuff. This was just some of the interesting things I ran into in a ramble. So I'm doing like I said, 14 or 15 hour drive. This helps keep me awake, so I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.